This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 526, recorded on March 10th, 2022. Here at Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios. And Ryan, Wieger's not here, so you can commiserate with me on this.
Yeah.
The weirdest weather couple weeks, right? Can't determine if it's going to be warm or cold. You're getting some snow. You okay down there in Kansas?
Yeah, we're not too far from you guys up in Nebraska, but yeah, kind of in between you and I. Got all the snow last night. It's kind of snowing out right now, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The weather is just up and down.
All over the place.
Air conditioner in the car one day, and then heated seats and the heat cranked the next, and it's just a mess.
Well, the good news
Midwest.
is it snows, and Bob, you know this because you live in the northern climate. In March, if it snows, it's usually gone in a couple days. It's not like it's going to be hanging around. Bob, you're down in Southern Cal. You're not even thinking about snow, right?
I don't even know what snow is anymore.
That's got to be pretty nice. You had moved the last time we chatted with you, but how is Southern California? Are you okay? Like we're hearing horror stories coming out of there.
I mean things are more expensive, but yeah, no snow, no I see just like you guys had snow like back home in Pittsburgh. They had like a whole snowstorm, and they're having another snowstorm this weekend. And I'm just like, sunny and 70 here. Can't complain. So
it's pretty great. You will get to some point maybe where you're like, oh, I miss the seasons because it's just always the same season.
Yeah,
it's always nice. And I grew up in San Jose. I know nice. Like, although I was a kid, I didn't know. I thought the whole world was that way. Like, you grow up in the Bay Area and you're thinking like, man, it's just nice all the time. A little bit warmer south where you are, but well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're okay and things are going well in Southern California. A couple reminders for everyone kind of listening. Don't forget, we'll premiere this again on Saturday. So this coming Saturday, noon Central, if you want to watch it on YouTube and a premiere, I'll have a couple folks there, including you, if you're listening and you want to join us noon. Go to the AverageGuy.tv/YouTube, and you can join us in chat along with the video as we premiere it. So if you want to do that, we've been getting 5 or 6 to show up on Saturdays. So if you want to show up Saturdays to get that done, you can do it as well. Another reminder, we dumped Podomatic. They were my very first podcast host provider. Still had a few subscribed out there. They tried to charge me even though I canceled my credit card. We took care of that and canceled their service. So make sure if you're subscribed, by the time you're hearing this, I've already canceled it. So hopefully you've made the jump over. Big thanks to Marv B, there we go, who joined us last week and with the launch of the IT Business Podcast. And Ryan and Bob are both podcasters. They know what it takes to do this week in and week out. And so congratulations, Marv, for getting that launch and success. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Bob and Ryan are with us from thinkcomputers.org, and they're kind of my go-to guys when I need like the most expensive computer equipment or peripherals. Like, hey, I've got $1,000. No, that's too little. I got $5,000 I want to blow. How do I get it done? Bob, Ryan, welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's always good to have you guys. And you guys, let's talk a little bit about your podcast real fast. We might have some new listeners who've jumped in. Bob, give us kind of the rundown. When do you guys podcast? How do they find you? And what do you talk about mostly?
So we podcast every Wednesday at, what would it be Eastern time, Ryan?
8:30 Eastern.
8:30 p.m. Eastern time, 5:30 Pacific. And basically we talk about kind of what's going on in the PC hardware world. So our website, we cover PC hardware in the sense of anything that kind of goes inside your computer, graphics card, motherboard, CPU, all that kind of stuff. We talk about, and we review products as well. So we talk about, what we reviewed the past week and then kind of what's going on in the tech world, kind of gaming as well in there in a little bit too. So
Ryan, you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, we have the weekly podcast. And then after that, every week, we usually stream on Twitch for a couple hours. Bob and I will hop on there, and typically we have another guy that plays along with us. So, some folks will make the way from the podcast to the stream, and just that kind of follows it up.
I think that's the unique thing about what you guys do is you do the podcast and then you go game at the end, and that's super cool. So
it gives us an excuse to play games. So
it's like, sorry, honey, I've got a podcast and then stream for a couple hours. I got to.
You don't understand how hard this is for me. And I know this is hard for me to do, but I'm going to go game, and I'm doing it for you, honey.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Kind of deal. Well, super great. When you think about just kind of overall, post CES, we kind of had you guys on right after CES. I think that was, didn't we? Or did we miss that one? And this is the makeup for it.
Yeah, I think we missed. I don't think we were on right afterwards.
So let's real quick before we dive into some of the reviews that we have on the site. From a CES perspective, it's been a weird couple years, right? And CES happened. Looked like it wasn't going to happen, but it did happen. Any high points coming out of that? And now that we've gotten a couple months away from it, CES is so much hype, right? And then some of those things don't ever actually happen. From some of the hype or some of the high points, Bob, anything you saw there that you think will become a reality this year that you're excited about?
Not so much on the PC side of things, honestly. There wasn't everything that was kind of announced at CES we kind of knew about for a while. I think I'm a big fan of Rivian still, and they should this year I think be finally shipping. So that's the electric truck. So that's pretty cool. But on the PC side of things, we didn't get any major announcements as far as what we look for is like new graphics cards or new CPUs, and we really didn't see any of that stuff. On the desktop side of things, we saw like a minor refresh on a lot of that stuff. But nothing that's going to be groundbreaking and new. So it kind of was, at least for me, was just like a little dull. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Ryan, anything you'd add?
Nothing too crazy. I know there was the one product I think that got a lot of attention was a Samsung curved monitor that was like their 55-inch Odyssey, and it is just enormous. 55 inches in general is huge for one screen, but then the fact that it can rotate and go to a vertical orientation, right? And the way they were showing that and how that can benefit you depending on your workload and your work type was pretty cool. But not the CES we're used to. Hopefully next year, I'm hoping things can hopefully get back.
I never want to go back to Vegas. I don't have any. I just cover it from afar. It's just like, I think I'm done with my Vegas days. That 55-inch monitor, I think I tweeted. You guys might have tweeted, or did you guys cover that? Was that a?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had an article on it. Yep.
And I think you did, and I picked that up, that to me too was a big. I'm a monitor guy. I mean, I love monitors. I could, if I could have whatever I wanted, I would have just a full wall all the way around me of monitors, right? I don't know why I'm so hooked on screen real estate, but that 55-inch was amazing. And then they showed it in the portrait mode. That was even more amazing, right? I was just like, wow. And two of those side by side in portrait, that would be pretty great. I'd love that. I'd love to have that set up. So, well, you guys have been spending a little bit of time, and let me bring this up. I'll share this on screen for folks that are just on audio. We'll try to make sure we talk a little bit about this. But Ryan, you recently looked at a Lenovo ThinkPad, and Bob, you got a review we're going to look at here in a second. But Ryan, this is the most recent one as we think about what's coming out on the laptop side of things. Anything, if I'm in the space to buy a laptop now. What's crazy is like we bought, I shouldn't say this, but we kind of bought equipment going into the pandemic, right? Pandemic happened. Oh crap, I'm going home. There was a huge surge in PC sales and laptop sales. Yep. You couldn't find a laptop for a while. I imagine that market's still maybe even a little tight. I don't know. Maybe is it? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and so that's 2 years ago, and we're thinking about, for some folks, they're like, well, I bought in a hurry, and now I kind of need. Now maybe I want to buy what I want. Talk a little bit about this ThinkPad line from Lenovo, of course, is their staple. The staple line, especially in the enterprise. Any thoughts on the review that you did there?
Yeah, so this is definitely like a workhorse of a laptop for sure. The one that Bob reviewed more recently, or towards the beginning of the year, is a lot more portable. So we're kind of talking about a spectrum of availability and types of hardware that you can get your hands on in this day and age. Um, this laptop has an 8-core, 16-thread processor in it, tons of memory, a terabyte of Gen 4 PCIe storage, right? So like super fast storage, a 3080 graphics card with 16 gigabytes of video memory, a full size, well, I say full size keyboard, but the full keyboard with numpad, tons of Thunderbolt ports, your HDMI, plenty Type C, Type A connections. It's just a desktop workstation replacement for you. It's definitely not your on the go road warrior as far as light, and you're not going to want to travel with this thing all the time on the plane and taking it in and out of hotel rooms and from meeting to meeting. But when you need to be getting real work done that's either graphically intensive or just requires a lot of compute, this is like definitely a model to check out. And you can configure it in all sorts of customized options on the Lenovo site as well.
We say that, it's heavy, and as I travel with laptops, I really never, weight is never an issue for me. It's the size, right? It's you sit, because I'm always playing coach, unfortunately, and you get in that coach seat, and I mean, anything besides a tablet is basically not going to work, right? In fact, I've even taken my phone and put it on I've put my phone, I've got a Microsoft keyboard. In fact, it's sitting right here. I've got one of these Microsoft keyboards that it's got a lid here. Let me see if I can grab it. So I got one of these Microsoft keyboards. It's got a cover on it. You pull that off, Bluetooth keyboard. This you can use, you can fold as a stand. I put that on the tray, put my phone on it, and use the phone kind of it. But so it's a little tiny keyboard and it's a little tiny phone, and it's still barely enough room on that tray. You're just like, oh my God, this is nuts. So it's just a size perspective. I don't know. And Bob will ask you this question too. When I'm traveling, whether that thing is super light or heavy, it's sitting in a backpack that I'm going to carry. And when I get to my, when I get to my destination, I'd rather have the power than not have it. But Bob, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for most people, I think you can find a thin and light that's very powerful. The laptop that I reviewed was, I actually went back to Pittsburgh on a trip with it, and that's all I brought. And most people these days, unless you're doing, I mean, you're not gaming, obviously, but if you're, unless you're doing like 3D modeling or game design or really intense video editing, like just like the ThinkPad X1 Carbon Gen 9, like, I mean, it's incredibly light, incredibly thin, and incredibly powerful. You know what I mean? And I think for most people, the big change that we saw a few years ago was moving from a normal hard drive, or even from like a normal SATA-based SSD to PCI Express storage, which means your boot times are so much faster. Your application loading time is incredibly faster. And that has nothing obviously to do with the processors, but even the processors now, that's a thin and light. I can edit 4K video on it, no problem. I think for most people, 90% of people, business tasks, word processing, Excel, PowerPoint, all of those things can be done on a thin and light, no problem. I think in the case of the one that Ryan reviewed, that's really for somebody who is replacing a desktop. Obviously, with the discrete graphics card, you can do some gaming, but on top of that, you can use that discrete graphics card, for like 3D modeling or something where you really need that type of class of graphics card. But I think the processors, they're all optimized for all of these applications as well. So Adobe applications or any type of serious applications, all of new Intel processors, I know they're all optimized for that. So I would definitely choose a thin and light over, especially when I'm traveling, over something big.
And one of the other differences, like Carbon that you looked at was the memory on there that comes with it is soldered, right? So that's how, one of those
Yeah.
ways that they can get away with making it a little thinner and lighter, right? They don't have to have the manual attachments to keep the DIMMs into the motherboard. Whereas on this laptop, it's got 4 slots, and I can pop those out and replace them and configure it. In the future, I found that 16 gigabytes or 32 wasn't enough, and I want to go up to 128 in there. Things like that. So you've got some of that handoff as well to think about. But I think Lenovo's got a great product, especially in this ThinkPad line. I don't want to have to send it back.
I've got a ThinkPad from work. One of the things that drives me crazy, I think it's Core i5. When it's on battery, it degrades the video, right? And I really like let me, and there's no way to overwrite it. At least I
You should be able to. You should be able to in Windows. You have to go into advanced settings, in advanced power settings, and then it's in there. There you can literally change what each, like what the CPU does, what everything does. You should be able to. I don't know if they have it locked down. But
they might. I wouldn't think we would lock those kinds of settings down. So I have to look. The crazy thing is it's only been off battery maybe 3 times in the 2 years. Like I got it right before, literally I drew it right before we March 17th, 2020, which is, the day everybody was sent home. And it's been plugged in here, or even when I go into work, I plug it in. Since traveling stopped, it just hasn't been on battery from time to time. And I need to figure this out, because my routine is to go into the office, sit in the atrium, and work for the first hour with coffee in the atrium, just on my laptop with no, it's a great way to start the day, right? Sunlight, and people are kind of moving around. But I did that this morning, and I was like, oh, that's right. The resolution is terrible. I need to go in, and so I'll have to dig that. I'll have to dig in, and get it fixed. Bob, you looked at the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. You were looking at, Ryan, you were looking at the ThinkPad T15G, and then Bob in the chat says, Jim, I should check out the X1 Nano, think 13-inch X1 Carbon. So the X1 Carbon, but a little bit smaller. So Bob, have you had a chance to look at even the Nano version?
No, I haven't, not yet. Okay. But I think like I said, like Ryan said, Lenovo does a really good job with the ThinkPad line. On top of, thin and light and powerful and all that kind of stuff, all the ThinkPads have, because they are made for business, they're made for travel. They have all these other things in there that protect your data, that protect it, security features, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they have a bunch.
Pretty rigorous testing on them.
Yeah. But no, I haven't had a chance to take a look at the X1 Nano yet, but I'll have to send them a request out there so I can take a look.
If you like the smaller ones, I just Ryan, I lean towards the more power. I'd carry the extra weight to get the bigger screen or the better resolution on the screen. That's just my preference. Now, I'm not even a hardcore coder or a gamer. I just like bigger screens. I mean, I used to carry around a 17-inch monitor for a 17-inch screen on a laptop, these big, gigantic, heavy ones. But that's just my preference. Bob, in the space, though, you guys have been reviewing laptops for a long time. I mean, have the options never been better than they are now? Or and then how much is the supply chain affecting what you guys are seeing from what's coming out? I know sometimes now, if you order a laptop, it may be 2 or 3 or 4 months before you even get it. What are you guys seeing, Bob?
Yeah, as far as options, I mean, like I said, one of the biggest upgrades you could do on any PC is upgrading your storage from a normal spinning hard drive to a SATA-based SSD, and then from a SATA-based SSD to PCI Express. You're basically 5 times the speed of your hard drive. So you're getting all of those options. All the newer laptops have like Gen 4 storage, which is about on the low end, about 5,000 megabytes per second or 5 gigabytes per second transfer speed. So, I mean, your laptop's going to power up in 3 to 4 seconds, which is really good. And all of the new, both on Intel and AMD side, all of the new processors, they're very well designed for mobile, longer battery life. So, I mean, you can have, I think that X1 Carbon was like 11 hour. I mean, it's, that any domestic flight, you're good to go, no matter what you're doing for the most part. So you have all of that as well. And as far as supply chain, I mean, there is still supply chain issues, but it's not as bad as, say, even 6 months ago. But the options are definitely limited. You actually see a lot of companies, Lenovo included, where you would see, say like that X1 Carbon, you would see like 12 SKUs for it, with different processor options. Now you see 4 or 5 because they can only get certain parts, or, so it is a little bit limited, but I think it's a lot better than what it was. And prices are so good too right now.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get a really, really good laptop that's going to last you like 4 or 5, 6 years. I mean, like a long time for like $1,200 to $1,500, and that's on like a high end. Like I said, that X1 Carbon's a high end laptop, and I think it started at like $1,300 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
priced out, this one was just under 2,900.
yeah.
And when you say that's everything, that's all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least they haven't. I mean, you could, with everything from a pricing perspective and a supply chain perspective, they could be charging a lot more, you would think. And so good to hear that maybe, kind of in that space, it's staying stable from a processing, from a CPU perspective. Of course, we, for a lot of years, Core i3, Core i5, Core i7, and we're seeing some i9s out there. Are those making their way into the laptop space? Is there a mobile version of that? I haven't followed that very, very, very closely, or are we staying on the laptop side? Are we still staying in the Core i7 space?
You do see Core i9s. They're mainly, for the most part, you'll see them in you'll see them in a laptop like Ryan got, which is made to be a desktop replacement, and you'll see it in gaming laptops because sadly, a lot of applications, normal everyday applications, don't take advantage of all the cores and threads that are in the, like an i9. So mostly gaming laptops and sort of like desktop replacement CAD sort of type laptops. But it's only, again, it's, company, say like Asus will have like 1 or 2 laptops that will have an i9. That's about it. You're not going to see a ton of them out there.
Yeah, this T15G has 8 SKUs across the i9 and Xeon processors. So, yeah, you can run the gamut all the way up there.
Is there, from a desktop perspective, and of course, as we think about the whole GPU shortage, and are we kind of past that now? Has that settled down? Can you buy a GPU? Can you buy a separate graphics card these days, or is that still hard to find?
Ryan, do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, there's still difficulty for sure. We have been seeing prices dropping for probably a month, maybe a little more than that. I haven't checked recently locally. I'll keep an eye on Best Buy every now and then, or Micro Center. I know Micro Center's been pretty good with getting cards out to folks, and the way that they distribute there. One of the other vendors, EVGA, has done a really good job getting cards to folks at MSRP. But it's still not just easy as walking into your big box store or checking out Newegg or Amazon or somewhere and getting a card right away. No, there's still issues, and you're definitely typically not paying MSRP.
If I want a gaming rig today, do I just buy a pre-built system that's got something built into it? Because apparently the builders, the system builders, are getting those where the public isn't. In some cases, Ryan, you've reviewed a gaming laptop, let's call it that, desktop replacement is what I've heard you guys say. If I'm in that space today and I want something gaming, should I just go the route of buying something already built?
Right now, it does make sense. And as much as it may pain me to say, oh, buy one that's pre-built and not putting it together, right? Because we love that process of picking out every component and putting it together ourselves. But yeah, if it's something where you've got that money burning a hole in your pocket and you've just got to have it now, right? That is a good way to get one. And a lot of times, we have a guy in our chat that comes and listens to the podcast a lot, and he bought a pre-built and was able to, sell off some of the components and make money out of the deal, right? Because he kept the GPU, but didn't need the rest of the components. And right now, yeah, you could be at the under the grasp of the vendors and the supply chain of, well, I got all the components except for my CPU or my GPU. And now you're just sitting on these components and either running them in a subpar configuration with an old graphics card you may have had from a previous generation, or it's just sitting there in a pile of boxes until you can get that last component that you need. And then, maybe by the time you can get something, the next generation is out, and that's a bad feeling. So yeah, I think pre-builts are definitely a good option at this point.
To do it. Bob, you want to add anything to that?
I think the biggest thing with pre-builts is that there's usually, you're out buying a graphics card, you're gonna pay well over MSRP, whereas in a pre-built, most of the time, depending on the vendor, but I mean, going to Best Buy or something like that, CyberPower, you're not going to get something that's way over MSRP. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of people are buying pre-builts and then pulling the cards out and then selling them, but I think, pre-built's kind of like the way to go right now. If you need something right now, or you're buying for somebody for like a birthday or graduation or whatever it may be, that they need it at this specific time, I think the best way to go is just to get a pre-built, because it's just, one, you don't have to build it, and two, you're going to get it in time for whatever you may need it for.
Bob, do you think the laptop replacement gaming rigs that are coming out now are sufficient to game on for, in most cases, for folks that are gamers? If I really wanted to get the best of both worlds and be like, yeah, I want something I can take it along with me, are we to that point where these laptops are good enough to do all the normal gaming that everybody else does?
I would say, yeah, from a power perspective. It all depends on the resolution too. So, if you're gaming at 4K, maybe not. I think the biggest thing that comes down to is temperatures. I mean, even in our review that Ryan did, I mean, that laptop got very hot. So that's kind of the main thing that you really worry about when it comes to that. But as far as power wise, the RTX 30 series from NVIDIA is excellent as far as, running a lot of games these days with, the highest end textures on and all that kind of stuff, especially at 1080p, 1440p. If you're a, 3070, 3080 mobile version, you should be pretty good on that front, getting over 60 FPS in most of those games.
It's kind of that, or a gaming, an Xbox or PS5, right? And those have those gotten any easier to find? Are you guys either following either one of those? Seemed like for a while they were impossible to find.
I don't follow them.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't follow
I think they're still pretty difficult as well, especially the PS5. I think the Xbox might be a little easier to find.
Yeah. Joe says he got an email from EVGA the other day, and Impulse bought another 3060 Ti. So Joe, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Those may be the kind of the way to get it done. I did hear that is opening up, so they're not as impossible to find kind of as they once were. You guys also review a lot of motherboards, and of course, I think we've seen some pretty good jumps in the manufacturing and I look at the motherboards now, and they're like race cars. Like they've got all kinds of great stuff on them. Has in the 2 years during the pandemic, and Bob, I'll throw this question to you first. Have there been some leaps in the technology going into the motherboards? And if I've got a PC, I might, you give me a hard time because I've got older equipment that I work off of. I stretch my stuff out for 10 or 12 years. If I was thinking post-pandemic here and I maybe want to build a PC of my own, is it a good time to jump in and get that done?
Yeah, I think we're still the two biggest things that I would say, on the Intel side, we have new Z690 chipset. And then on the AMD side, we've had X570 for a while. Both were even gigantic leaps from the previous generations. And I think the past 4 or 5 years have been a great time to build a new PC, just because of the, so much advancement. Every new generation, we're getting so much more, on new motherboards, kind of what you're showing here. Like you said, they look amazing. But the biggest kind of advancements, not only a computing power from the CPU perspective, but just on the motherboard itself, we're getting, PCI Express storage across the board. Like that board you're showing has 4 PCI Express slots on it, which means you can install 4 tiny M.2s. You could basically build a computer without even having any 2.5-inch SSDs or big spinners in there. You could do that all on the board itself. And then, Wi-Fi, we're getting Wi-Fi 6E on a lot of these boards, which is incredibly fast. You don't need to plug in anymore, even though most of us still plug in. You're getting that on the motherboards too. So there's so many great advancements. The boards look great. They have lights on them. Like you said, they look like race cars. On the back there, we have USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 on the back, which is incredibly fast. That would be about 2,000 megabytes per second on an external drive or a portable drive. So that's just excellent there as well. By default on this, you're getting 2.5 gig LAN if you did want to plug in. So again, super fast stuff there. So yeah, I mean,
this is crazy. Like, look how many ports are on the back of this thing.
Yeah, how many do we count, Ryan? 13?
12. 12. Yeah, it was 13. Yeah,
13 on the back of there. And that's the biggest thing is we have so many gadgets. Right? We have our webcam here. We have our microphone, keyboard, mouse, lights, all this kind of stuff. You need all those extra USB connections on the back.
Yeah. What's MSRP on something like this, Bob?
It all depends. I think this board, this is the Gigabyte Z690 Aorus Ultra. I believe it's $329 for that, for this board. But I mean, motherboards are it's just like anything. I mean, you can go from the low end to the suit. You can spend up to close to $1,000 on a motherboard too, but that's the crazy, insane high end that nobody needs. But on like Z690 side, I would say the average is around like $300. And then the X570 side, which is the AMD side, it's a little bit less expensive now because it's a little older, but it's still, right around what would you say, around like $200? For an average X570 board,
for an average, 250 maybe.
Yeah, 250. So,
which is not, that hasn't changed. I mean, over the last 10 years, the lower boards were 150. The medium, the middle ones were 300. The high ends were, and I think what the difference is, we didn't used to have $600 or $700 or $800 motherboards, right? It was, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 for the most expensive. That upper end has kind of come in. So maybe you've got more expensive options now where before. I think even on some basic boards, you're getting some really good, for under 200, you can get a board that's got enough for the average guy, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think the speeds is the biggest thing, like you said, Gen 4 storage, USB 3.2, Wi-Fi 6E, you're getting all of that, at that price point. And on Z690 by default, the chipset has 2.5 gig LAN. You'll see 2.5 gig LAN default on most X570 boards too. So lots of, you're just getting, everything is just becoming faster, which is obviously good for us when it comes to loading times or latency as far as, gaming or like what we're doing here, streaming, right. You don't have any lag issues.
Yeah.
When we're getting DDR5, DDR5 as well, is going to become more and more prevalent, both on the Intel and AMD side.
Is that not a thing yet? Are we still, it seems like that's been hanging out there for a while. Is that not mainstream or is that mainstream now?
It's
I wouldn't call
so
it mainstream.
Much, yeah.
Okay.
Availability of the chips and sticks is still, I think, pretty tough to get. Intel has some boards out that support it. There's nothing from AMD yet that supports DDR5, but next generation, we'll see that. We'll have parity there.
I guess I saw that in GPUs, right? GDR5's been a GPU standard for a while, and I guess I assumed that had made its way into the PC space, but maybe we've got maybe there's some delay. If I'm buying a board, so that Bob, that board we just looked at, is that DDR5 or is that DDR4?
Yeah, that's DDR5. So Intel was the first the first chipset, which was Z690. That's the first one first mainstream consumer based product to support DDR5 memory. So what they did, though, because of the scarcity of DDR5, is you'll see a lot of Z690 chipset motherboards. They'll either be DDR5 version or DDR4 version. So with that, with a certain motherboard, you might see two different SKUs, one that supports DDR4 and one that supports DDR5, because again, one, it's a lot more expensive, and two, it's a lot harder to find.
And DDR4, what's the speed difference between the two? I mean, is it that much of an advantage to go to DDR5 as opposed to buying a board with DDR4?
Not you. So I believe, I don't know how, like, the highest rated DDR4, but you can get up there around 4400 megahertz. But DDR5 starts, I believe, at 4800. You're going to get up to, as the technology improves and as the platform kind of matures, you'll see 56, 57, all the way up to 6800 megahertz, a lot faster.
Okay.
Now, how does that translate into say getting more FPS in games? We haven't seen a whole lot of testing on it. I haven't tested that specifically just yet, because I literally just got some DDR5 not that long ago. But I think you have to wait for the platform to mature a lot to see it, because with DDR5, the biggest thing is that your timings have gone up significantly. So yeah, it's just like anything, you got to take time to for it to mature.
So if I was putting a system together myself right now, and maybe I'll ask this question of you, Bob, both you and you too, Ryan. If I'm putting a system together right now and I want to keep it fairly reasonable, I'm okay staying DDR4 as the price point there, still pretty reasonable. If I'm going to stretch it, I could go to DDR5, but that may not give me that much lift. That's not what I'm looking for. I don't know, Bob, any thoughts on that? Would you just say, hey, DDR4 is okay for now, build the system with that? That'll get you the next 6 years, 5-6 years, maybe. I don't know, Bob. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And especially like if you're building like an AMD Ryzen system, it only supports DDR4 anyways.
Gotcha.
If you're doing Intel, I mean, depending on the price difference that you'll find, it'd probably be like $100-$150 difference going, looking at a DDR4 kit versus a DDR5 kit. And we always say, Ryan and I always say, that $150 could go towards something, like a better, going from a 3060 to a 3070, or going from a 2.5 inch SATA SSD to PCI Express SSD. So there's a lot of other things that could be upgraded that would make a much bigger difference, I would say.
Ryan, any thoughts?
Nope, I agree. DDR4, there's nothing. Nobody's going to point fingers at you and laugh because you bought DDR4 in 2022. So
even if I bought it, you guys would be okay with that?
We'd be all right. Yeah. And if you were trying to determine between DDR4 and 5, right, you may be able to get that next up capacity, go from a 32 gig kit to a 64, as opposed to only being able to get maybe a 32 in the DDR5 realm. So maybe get a little more longevity out of it, or if you needed that extra memory, you could go that route.
I've been doing a lot of VM stuff in there, and it's nice to have
you always want that memory.
64.
Oh yeah.
And that is from a value perspective, I'd rather go a gen back but get more than be on the cutting edge and have less. Just for me, that's just kind of how I think about it. Ken says he picked up a 5700G and the ASRock B55 or 550, which is AMD, right, on that side.
Yes.
64 gig RAM, DDR4 on a Black Friday deal. Any thoughts? I'll throw this back to you, Bob. Any thoughts on the B55?
The B550 Tai Chi is one of the best B550 boards out there. So definitely awesome pickup on that. And the 5700G has built-in graphics. So if you're not, you don't need a graphics card right away, which is nice. It's one of their APUs. And 64 gigabytes of 3600 memory. 3600 memory is kind of the sweet spot too when it comes to AMD. So it's right in that performance spot, good performance spot when it comes to AMD. So that's a sweet little deal that he got there, especially if it was on Black Friday, I would say.
Yeah,
Bob does have you have a full review of that motherboard out on the site.
I do.
11 pages. So yep. If
you
want more info about it, you've already got it. But
I believe in the review,
great.
I did say it was the best B550 board out there currently. So Yeah, definitely.
There
You
you
can check it
there
out
you
if you
go,
want.
Ken. That's a good.
Yeah.
And is that maybe a sweet spot right now as we think about on the AMD side of things where that's been out a while, right? I should be able that technology. It's not like that stuff is lightning or is bleeding edge technology new. I could probably pick up some good deals if I'm watching for some of the and maybe even a post CES deal where maybe some new stuff is coming out and they're trying to get rid of the old stuff.
Yeah, the next generation of Ryzen processors is expected to come out towards the end of this year. So a lot of that stuff will be going, and it has been going down in price anyways. Like when he got it Black Friday, there were some amazing AMD deals, and the processors are very well priced, I would say right now too. Um, unless you need the latest of the latest, I think the AMD Ryzen ecosystem is great right now.
If if I was going to do a budget build, why wouldn't I go that way right now? Right? I mean, is
Yeah.
there any disadvantage to me not choosing? I mean, what am I sacrificing by not going Intel at this point? Right? I mean, it'd be a pretty safe build, right?
Yeah, I think as far as processors, they're very close together, right? The only thing that you would be missing, say if you went with X570 or B550 on the AMD side versus Intel right now, is you obviously no DDR5 support, no PCI Express 5.0 support, which is not going to make a difference really right now. And that's basically it. Just the X570 and B550 boards are a little bit older, but that's basically it.
Yeah. Good. Nice price point. Anyway, so at this
Yeah.
point, I'd be able to get in and get it done. I wouldn't say budget because they're still going to be pretty expensive, depending on what you buy, but maybe not a bad like for me and for what I do.
Mhm.
Kind of basic computing. I run a lot of VMs. I may be doing some crypto, but different than I'm not burning crypto with I'm doing it off hard drives as opposed to burning them off GPUs. So in this case, I just really kind of need basic processing power. I don't need the fastest stuff in the world,
Mhm.
but I do need it when I want it. Like
Yeah.
I'm not doing it right. Like, hey, I want to call on that thing. I do want it to go pretty fast when I need it, but I don't
Yeah.
need it all the time.
Yeah, I think like a Ryzen 5 series processor is great. Was it the 5600X?
5600X, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was gonna say.
very well priced with B550 motherboard. And yeah, you'll definitely be set.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good replacement. The boards I'm using now, again, they're coming up on 6-7 years. I've gotten a lot of run out of them. They do what I need to do now, but I am kind of thinking through like, okay, what's the next one that I need to build? And I kind of take that philosophy of I'm probably buying last year's technology where it's still okay, but I'm not paying for the bleeding edge,
Correct. Yeah.
of that. Would you on the AMD side, so Ryzen 5, does that equate to a like a Core i5 or
Mhm.
is that why it's done that way?
Yeah.
Is that AMD
Yeah.
doing that kind of on purpose? Is that the way it works?
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically
Okay.
why they did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to go that route, I have to maybe start pricing that out and just start thinking through like waiting for those maybe some of those deals to come out this spring, watching for a certain set of boards and maybe a chip at a good price, pick up 64 gig of RAM like Ken did. I mean, Ken, it sounds like you got a pretty good deal. Maybe I should check in with you, Ken, and see where you got that, and kind of get that done. Any other thoughts as we think about motherboards? You guys do these a lot, and I'm always envious of what you get to do here. But any other thoughts as you think about folks maybe thinking about doing some system builds, or any other thoughts on motherboards?
Ryan, you can take that one if you want.
Oh, let me think here. Not in particular. Like Bob
Sure.
said, most boards are going to have at least 1 to 2 of the M.2 slots that support the 4th gen of PCIe, NVMe storage.
And that's a
So
big deal
like,
now, right? I mean
it is.
that's
It's common, which is
Okay.
good. So you don't have to worry about getting a board that doesn't support it. At one point, we were at that point where it was, this actually only supports SATA drive in an M.2 factor, right? And so folks would end up going that route and not getting the performance they thought they were going to get. So just making sure that you get the best storage for your board. I mean, boards are so nice. Like you kind of mentioned that even the lower end boards have so many of the great features, you know, the great wireless, the fast USB. A lot of the times the main differences are how's that cooling on the power processing for the CPU and some of those additional lighting features, things like that, where, you know, if you're not overclocking the CPU and don't need that extra headroom, those lower end boards can really be an awesome, not necessarily budget board, but affordable option if you don't need that higher end feature set.
It seemed like the Gen 4 storage last fall or maybe even last summer was still kind of questionable. I think I remember asking you guys some questions around that. And it's like, well, kind of, it sounds like today that's pretty locked in. Like if you're going to do something, you want to make sure you've got that Gen 4 storage available to you because it's just going to be so much faster. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you
Yep,
agree
definitely.
with that going forward? So, and then Bob, you mentioned this just a second ago, and I haven't really even thought about this. We're to a point where you don't need additional drive of like
Yeah.
you can put enough onboard storage on there that in from a hard drive standpoint or from a NVMe or stick storage as I like to call it, it's cheap.
Yeah.
Or it's cheapish, right? I mean, that storage is still, even with everything getting out of control, we're still seeing 1 terabyte for like $90 and 2
Yeah.
terabytes for under 200, right? I mean, that's pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change in the past 5 years or something like that would be, getting that storage that's so fast. That's one of the biggest things that increases your startup time when you hit that power button on your computer, or loading a game or loading an application or any of that stuff. It's so instant now. And I think for people who need a ton of storage, you can get that external drive. That's what I would recommend to a lot of people who don't want to have the spinning drives in their system. Just get a big like 10 terabyte external USB drive. I have a 20 terabyte one up here. It's just that's for all my cold storage that I rarely access. It's
Right.
just old stuff
Right.
on there. So
Well, with 2.5 land coming out, like we may be to this point where again, if you need any extra storage, it's really just going to the NAS,
Yeah.
whatever you've done there, and just leave that there, and then you've got maybe a 1 terabyte stick for your OS and a couple 2 terabyte sticks for whatever you want to keep local. At this point, maybe even just 1 2 terabyte stick for you
and
like,
we have cloud storage too, which is affordable, and you can access it anywhere too. So it's like if you have all these old photos, or I mean, most of my old storage is like photos from my old phones or whatever. Just throw it up on cloud storage and just kind of be done with it.
Yeah. No, right on. You guys also do a lot of case reviews, and we've talked about that in the past while you've been on here, Bob. I'll throw it over to you. When we think about cases today versus cases in the past, whatever that is, are you seeing any changes to them? Are they getting, or what are they adding to them? Or are they just getting, better colors, more RGB lighting, and holes all over the place? But from a case perspective, what's changed on cases, or has it?
I think the biggest thing is that we've seen is proper airflow. The way the cases are designed, they're even in a case I reviewed lately, even the mesh that goes in the front of the case has been completely redesigned for better airflow. It's not just some typical mesh that you would see in a normal case. It's been completely designed for better airflow. You see better performing fans that are made specifically for cases too, that are not just like an industrial fan that we saw years ago on cases. They would just throw these loud industrial fans that didn't push a whole lot of air either or correctly. You see just like that case, that big open front there, that is all ventilation on the front, so proper airflow into the case, which is really good. I think that's the biggest change we've seen probably over the past like 5 or 6 years is proper airflow. A couple years ago, we kind of got out of that with all the glass and lights and all that kind of stuff. But I think, especially with, high super high-end graphics cards like an RTX 3090, you need good proper cooling. And these, all these newer cases, especially from this company's called Fractal Design, they make good proper cases with proper cooling, to keep those components nice and cool, because even almost every 3090, if you're pushing it, it gets really hot, no matter what, unless you're water cooling it. All of the cooling systems from aftermarket card makers, they're still not that great, and it sounds like the card's going to take off into space because the fans are spinning so fast. So having good airflow throughout your case is one of the most important things. So that's kind of the big change that I've seen.
Well, obviously, there's still a market for this, and you would. I think it's one of those quiet markets where you don't. I mean, definitely cases definitely don't hit mainstream conversation. You're not. It's not office water cooler conversation like, "Hey, I got this new case," right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the innovation that's happening with cases, I mean, this is something I see as I go out and look at what's up there or what's out there. Seems like they're continuing to innovate. So there must be enough people buying these for that to make sense. But it does seem
I
like it's a
think
pretty small market.
Yeah, I think the big thing is a lot more people are building their own PCs. We saw that obviously with the pandemic. Instead of, getting, a lot of people got allotted a certain amount of money to either buy a laptop, and they wanted to build their own PC. And I think the big thing you see too is that all of these companies in the DIY PC, they make it easy to build your own PC too. Where if I think about a case from 5 to 6 years ago, that like here you can see towards the top, there's like a thumb screw that you can just like use with your thumb instead of a full screwdriver to take it out. You can see vibration dampening on the hard drive cage there. Like you didn't have that stuff, and everything is made to make it easier to install something in there. All the routing holes you have for all your cables, that stuff never used to be there before. This one comes with its own, just like that. That's like their side panel. You can take it off with one finger. There's no extra screws on it. Like it's very simple and easy to do. Like I said, the innovation really, it comes down to, I think, just better airflow and then making it easier for the user to install the components.
And but I mean, it must be happening. Like the market, if this wasn't happening, the market, they wouldn't be doing this, right? It just wouldn't even be there. And yet the case market, has it gotten you guys review a lot of cases. How are we seeing more manufacturers, less manufacturers, or kind of the same amount in the space there? Has it consolidated down a little bit, or is it still, we've got 5 or 6 or 10 manufacturers out there making these things?
Right? Yeah, I'd say you have probably 6 to 8 core manufacturers of cases that we've had for the long run. And then, you've got a couple outliers here and there that are smaller. They either market niche group of folks, either that small form factor group that is it Jay that comes on the show every now and then, and he's always doing those really compact builds, right? So there's that group of people that want the most power they can get in the smallest form factor. So there's those more boutique-y shops there, and then you've got your high end builds that all aluminum and maybe some more glass to them and just higher end features that you're not going to get on your standard 6 to 8 major case manufacturers. But a lot of those big players have made large advances, like Bob said, in making building easier, routing cables more logically, doing things to make the build cleaner and just more efficient, and I'll kind of tag onto that whole glass thing. We all kind of got caught by the tempered glass bug, and me especially, I loved, a tempered glass on all the sides, and it looks great, but man, does it kill airflow. And we've kind of, we're making that turn in the right direction to get better airflow. The case you had up there, that Fractal case has the huge either 180 or 200 millimeter fans in the front, and the back of it is pretty much transparent because it's all just perforated to let air flow out the back. That case is really awesome.
And not is this like 100 and 150,
I
170,
think
something like that?
if you scroll down, it's in the review. I think it's
That'll be tough.
150, 149. Yeah.
149 for the normal. You said for the normal versions, and 169.99 for the version with the two
With the two
ARGB
RGB
fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. You give it a 9 out of 10. So that's I mean, a case again. I mean, we were buying cases 10, 15 years ago, and they were $100 for the good ones, right?
Yeah.
And to go 10 years and there's still 100, it's 150, and you kind of go, actually, with inflation, these cases may be cheaper than they were 10 or 12 years ago.
I think
and they're way better.
There's a lot of competition too. I mean, like Ryan said, there are some major players, but I mean, there are companies that just have that case that everybody wants. And there's just a lot of competition on price, and then there's some companies that just have just like your ordinary everyday case. And a lot of times those are like 70 to 80 bucks, that don't really offer a ton of features.
I got the Cooler Master Land case, the big square one that was super popular, and I love that thing. It's big, open, got a lot of room, it's got a lot of airflow. You can do a lot of things with it. Even today, if I put a new board in there and I wanted to get a pretty tall cooler on it, or if I wanted to water cool that, or do some active cooling on it, it would fit in there, would do just fine. That's a great. You got room for hard drives. In fact, I had that case for about 6 years before I realized on the side there's a space for more hard drives in there that I had never seen before. I'm like, this is a great case. That being said, there are some great cases that are coming out that are just They look great, and I think what I hear you saying, they function better than they used to. Maybe as well, right? Keeping things cool. Any other thoughts on cases, guys? Anything that you're seeing in the industry, Bob? Anything you're seeing in the industry, Ryan, that is something we should watch for? Anything new out there?
Not so much new. We are seeing, just like we talked about with motherboards with connectivity, you're seeing a lot more, your front ports on your case or your top ports. We're seeing USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 on the front, which is very new. That's a Type C port and Type C as well. So instead of getting the USB A ports, you're getting a Type C port now. Which is definitely a plus if you do any type of. I have a ton of portable hard drives, so I just love having the fast storage, right there. Besides that, no, I mean, I think. Go ahead, Ryan.
I'd say and this is just one brand to pick out, but like Corsair with their integrated controllers on their cases, they have their cases that come with a fan controller and a lighting controller that puts you right into that Corsair ecosystem with their IQ software. So that's kind of one way they get you on the case or maybe the cooler, and hey, you buy this pair of things, and guess what? You can control them all from one panel in Windows, and that makes things really nice. And they're not the only one that provides these integrated controllers, but I think they're probably the best at it right now, and their ecosystem is the most robust. So you dedicate yourself to one of those ecosystems and you can really do some awesome customization and synchronization of all those components right there.
Joe says, remember back in the day when we crammed all those Pentium 4s into a crappy case with 1 or 2 80mm exhaust fans, and they were hotter than the surface of the sun? And that's all true. I mean, those boxes.
And those 80mm fans sounded like they were like shooting off into space too.
Yeah, you were lucky if you got a 92mm in a case. And you're like, oh, this is really high end.
Well, and those early Pentiums, right? Bob says, remember those first Pentiums were not cooled properly. They burned holes in the motherboards, or you take the case, you take the stock fan off, and there'd be a brown, there would be a brown mark on the top of the chip itself where it burned. You're like, oh man, that thing got hot in there, right? In those early days. Yeah, we've come a long way from those early from those early cases. And yet I've got a couple older cases that I've retroed. Ryan, you helped me get some new fans for some of my older cases that are fantastic, right? They improve the the airflow in them. They're super quiet.
I think you went with the Noctuas,
I
was it? Or
did.
it was either that or Be
Yeah.
Quiets.
No, it was the Noctuas that I
Okay.
went with. And they're great. I mean, they're just great
Oh, yeah.
fans. So you can't, even if you've got an older box that you might really like, and I've got a couple of those I really like, you can go in and retrofit them with some pretty good cooling to kind of help do that in that space. There's a lot of great help for that. And I think there's a lot of great peripherals in that space that are coming out to help with that, right? And so you don't, although as I tell you now, every time I have you guys on, I start thinking like, oh, I need to build a new computer. Oh, super good. I've caught the bug for sure. I mentioned to this, both Bob and Ryan, I mentioned this to you guys early on, and we're not going to dive deep into this topic, but I got to talk about it from an Apple perspective, right? Because back early in the year, I guess this is last year now. So I've had my Mac Mini M1. I got bit by the M1 bug. I that's the first real processor that I gotta have this thing. Like I gotta see how this thing works, right? So bought that pretty quickly after it came out with it. You know, I'm probably $1,000 into that thing, right? Well, with the announcement of the Ultra, which is basically, we won't get into the technical details of it, but it's basically just two M1s kind of, put together to and optimized to work really well. I was looking at that new box, that the Ultra box, and it's like $2,000. And all of a sudden you kind of go, well, I bought an M1 for 1,000. I could get two of them for 2,000. They'll probably give me some trade in on that. Why wouldn't I go with an Ultra, right? At this point, I know. Do you guys have you from that? Listen. I know you're heavy on the Windows side or on the PC side of things, but is that enticing at all to you guys to think about? I mean, Mac is really doing, or Apple is really doing some things with their processors.
I think, well, we talked about it a bunch. I mean, I think that the M1 was a great leap for them, not only in terms of processing power, but to get out of the Intel ecosystem. And when you're designing hardware and you have full access to the hardware, it allows you to optimize things the kind of the way that you want to. And I think for Apple, the M1 has been amazing. And I think the Ultra now, a lot of people who are in the Apple ecosystem, they want a desktop PC, but they don't want to pay like $20,000 for the Mac Pro. That's just super. Most people don't need that. And the M1's powerful enough to do a lot of a lot of Apple people are very video editing type, designer type people. But they want something that's a little bit better than like the laptop. So they have this Ultra now, which I think is a very good price range for what it is for the Apple crowd. And I haven't looked at, I know what they said about performance, but it seems like it's going to be great for performance. It's going to be what a lot of the people, again, who don't have $25,000 for a Mac Pro, they're gonna go to this thing, and it's gonna be like the PC they have for 5 or 6 years, I'd say.
Right.
Yep, kind of a PC type of unit.
Yeah. Well, I certainly, I mean, when I bought the M1, I was kind of thinking I'll probably get, 2 or 3 years out of this, fully intending to trade it in on something else. Let's just be really clear about that. Gen 1. Like, okay, this isn't probably one I'm going to hold on to forever. Now, I know that sounds weird to you guys because I hold on to everything forever, but this was one I intended to think, okay, I'm now in the Apple ecosystem. They give some pretty good trade-in cost, trade-in value when you go to bring their stuff in. It's one I'm gonna seriously look at. I took the no interest payments on the Mini. Why wouldn't I? It was free money, right? You stretch that thing out. So it's paid for, and all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe this is the move to the Tesla. I'm going from the M1 to the Tesla and getting the Ultra, a step up. Probably be able to get that thing for around $1,500. Do the same kind of deal, put that on payments, and run that out for a year on their money. And then they've said, and I saw this. I was reading up on this on your site. And I forget who wrote this article, but he said that the Ultra will not need any new, like they won't have to optimize your software because it'll see it as a single processor on it. And so again, that's kind of cool for me because I'm like, okay, I'm not waiting. I've been waiting for Mac to kind of optimize. Every month something new comes out. Okay, optimize for the M1. That'll work day one. So all of a sudden I'm kind of thinking like, well, maybe it's time, daddy needs new shoes.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and I think again for people in the Apple ecosystem, the past couple years have been pretty awesome as far as performance wise. It always felt like they were just a little bit behind the ball as far as performance, and then their optimization was really based on Intel because that's what they were running before, and now they have control over all of that, which is a good thing. So.
Brian in the chat room says, he says, I was a little surprised they put the M1 on the iPad Air. I understand for the iPad Pro, but to put the computer chip on the Air was a bit surprising. And, I think they're trying to get that everywhere, right? Just make that the standard. That's their silicon. That's their, that's their, that's their flagship, right? I think that's what they're leading out with. And I think as we see with the Pro and now the Ultra, they're going to double down on this. And have I seen like an M2, some discussions? Have you guys, is there?
Yeah, we've seen some rumors about that.
What it's, what do you know about that, Bob? What have you
obviously better performance. There are some rumors about, more cores, even I guess they would say a desktop chip, that would be like more like what you would see from Intel and AMD as far as like a 16 core chip, but that's just rumors. Obviously I think Apple designs for mobile first, for laptops, because that's their what they sell most of. So I think when we see an M2, it's going to be obviously designed for mobile first, and then you'll see, just like we saw with this announcement, something more for the mid-range desktop.
Ryan, any thoughts?
It makes me, I always go back to, do I need an iPad? Do I need an iPad? And now that I've got, like Brian said, that chip's now there, and I don't need the Pro, so it may make sense for me to grab one now.
Bob says maybe they overbought the M1 or overproduced in this case, and now they're shifting to the next gen. I mean, certainly having that, creating their own CPU, being able to write the software for that, I mean, that puts them in a perfect position to be able to do it. And I have been more than happy with my M1. Like, it is, I ran a Core i7 for a lot of years, and it was a great PC, super stable, 4700 chip, the workhorse of that generation. I think it's a third or fourth generation, so it's pretty old. Today, it still does a great job for me with VMs and just kind of stuff that I don't need super powerful stuff for, but it's still a workhorse. Like, if you were to ask me, I mean, that's some of the best money I ever spent was on that chip, and it's lasted me a decade at this point, and I'm still running it hard. Like, I run that thing hard every single day on a stock cooler, and it does great, right? So, the M1 has been equally, for me, it's been that equal workhorse, right? I run a lot of video out of it. I run a lot of audio out of it. It continues to get optimized. But now this new Ultra has got me thinking, like, maybe now I get in this hamster wheel of constantly, instead of buying and holding, where I buy and upgrade at some point to where that matures out, and then the newer stuff, because you're getting two. This is definitely two M1s. It's not just one, it's two, right? And so it seems like it'd be pretty cool to go with. So I'm gonna have to take a look at the math on that one. That's one of those where it's out now, so I can, I think the 18th, today's March 10th, and I don't think it releases till the 18th. If Wieger was here, he would definitely have me talked into this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tried to pre-order and then they got pushed back to, I forget when their dates got pushed back, but you might be able to walk in the store and get one, but
and I'm not in a hurry. I don't have to have it, but it would make sense from a just kind of a workflow in that ecosystem standpoint. I guess I need to see that M1 should still get me quite a bit on a trade-in, I would think, and then compare that to the two, look at it at the payments with the free money, and just kind of go, okay, let's do this thing. That was such a great experience with the M1.
Mhm.
I'm like, why wouldn't I do that again? And just kind of see how it goes. So maybe I don't have a new, I don't have a new Intel or even an AMD chip in my future, but maybe I've got that M1 Ultra.
You're working towards a hardware as a service type of purchasing model.
Kind of.
You
Well,
keep
I mean,
getting
it's
them, and they keep giving you where
kind
sounds
of
all
taking
right.
the phone approach to it, Ryan,
Yeah,
in some sense, right?
absolutely.
I just bought the M1 a year ago. I mean,
Mhm.
so never know. Gents, thanks for jumping. It's always great to spend time with you guys. I always spend money when I'm done with you, which is super great. Bob, what's coming up is when you think about some of the reviews that you're doing, what's coming up at thinkcomputers.org for you, and what do you have coming out, or what are you going to be reviewing?
A lot of new Intel stuff. So we have a bunch of Z690 motherboards, DDR5, like Ryan said. We just got a couple new kits in of that. So kind of really excited to dive into all of that. Motherboards are like probably my favorite thing to review. So I have a lot of that stuff coming up. That's kind of like the main things. We have, new keyboards, mice, all that, a couple some storage things, but a lot of motherboards for me, which I'm pretty excited for.
Keyboards have gotten fancy. Like all of a sudden they went from industrial to super cool, crazy stuff, right? I was looking at the keyboards of some of the stuff you've reviewed lately, and was like, wow, this is, I mean, RGB into the keyboard for sure, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pretty interesting. If you're a keyboard, if it's important to you, no surprise here. I'm still using an Apple keyboard that's probably 20 years old. So, yeah. What are you showing there, Bob?
This is the iQnix. What is this? The i80 Explorer.
80,
no, it's the i80 Explorer. It's designed to be like kind of futuristic, RGB backlit, mechanical keys. It's probably one of my favorite keyboards.
Nice. Mechanical or
mechanical key switches, and you can swap out the switches too. So if I want to get a different type of switch that feels different, sounds different, I can actually take the physical switches out of this and get a whole new set of switches for this.
That seems like a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work.
That just seems like a lot of work. Like that's an afternoon for me. I might need a nap in the middle of that. Like I'll get through 26 of them and then I need a nap.
Yeah.
So Ryan, anything you got on your plate coming up?
I kind of cover, not random items, but I've got a mechanical keyboard in from Cherry. They're probably the most popular Switch manufacturer. They also make full keyboards, so I have a low profile mechanical keyboard from them I'm reviewing right now. I have an external sound card from Sound Blaster, an all-in-one liquid cooler from Cooler Master, and then a full chair from Cooler Master as well that I'm taking a look at. So just a couple random items in the pipeline there.
Some great stuff. I think what you guys review is really just perfect for the listeners of Home Gadget Geeks. So if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed to what you guys do on a podcast, head out. What's the easiest way? What just go to thinkcomputers.org and they can
everything's there. We have links for a podcast, YouTube, RSS feed, all that kind of stuff. So
it's super great. It always seems like I've got an evening podcast for work or something else when you guys are podcasting. I try and jump in when I can, and always great to catch up with you guys. But I think from an audience perspective, if you're listening to this show, if you haven't added it to your podcast player, you probably should, because it's like, if you've liked tonight, you're gonna like what Bob and Ryan do on a weekly basis. So make sure you get subscribed to that as well. Gentlemen, thanks for coming out. Hang tight. Can you guys stay around for a few minutes afterwards?
Sure.
Okay, we'll do a little post show. If we didn't live chat room, if we didn't get to your questions, we had a lot to talk about. We'll have you repost them in the post show. A couple reminders on our way out. One, we are live here every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. If you want to join us, just about every week we're doing it. I'm taking a few more weeks off these days, but just about every Thursday, we'd love to have you come out and do it. Big thanks to Mike Wieger as well. He's out for the week, and so we'll have him back next week. So if you're missing him, he'll be here. Big thanks to Christian Johnson over there at Maple Grove Partners, secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. If you're starting a website or you need to do something along those lines, Christian can take care of you. MapleGrovePartners.com will get you there. We'll get you there as well. Plans start as little as $10. And then take it to our Discord group. If you go to theaverageguy.tv/Discord, a great way, lots of conversation. I know you guys have a really active Discord group as well, right? Is there an easy way to get to that group if folks wanted to join you guys on Discord?
I believe it's just thinkcomputers.org/Discord. I should get you in there.
Yeah, great. So if you haven't jumped into the Discord groups, I know your group is great. I'm in it. I stalk you guys there, just seeing what's. I can't even, like, some of the things you guys talk about. I'm not even in the same. I'm not even in the same category. But if you want to get really technical in there or conversations about the reviews for you guys, that'd be a great way to jump in and get active in that group here, pretty quick. We are live, like I said, every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv live. Thanks for coming out. For those listening live tonight, Tony, thanks for tweeting. You're always good for a tweet or two while we're doing the live show. We'll be back next week. With that, we'll say goodbye.